Freedom's an idea that will never die.
Well, hello, Rivals fans, and welcome back to the Rivals Report, the show that gets you up to speed on Rivals Esports news in a nice, bite-sized package. My name is Diatonic, and this is the Rivals Report number 12 for the week of August 18th, 2025. On this week's report, it's Rostermania season here in Rivals, as teams and players shuffle up ahead of a busy MRC season and Ignite Stage 2. We've also got your first look at some of the new Stage 2 teams as the first split of Ignite Open qualifiers wrapped up over the weekend. And finally, we've got highlights from both weeks 1 and 2 of the third season of the Vanguardian League. Well, even after a wildly successful first LAN tournament in China, the battle is far from over. Ahead of the upcoming Stage 2 of Ignite, plenty of teams are doing some sprucing up, and some of your favorite players may be sporting different colors when Ignite returns in just a few short weeks. Welcome to Rostermania! Rostermania refers to the period of time after a major tournament where roster shifts happen en masse, and we're delivering you some of the latest updates and transfers from across the board. Perhaps the biggest piece of Rostermania news thus far, the recently crowned mid-season finals champions are now free agents. Yes, the roster that flew the colors of Rad Esports has now returned to their original unsigned status and are once again operating under the name Team 1. I'm doubtful that will remain the case for very long, but at least as of right now, Team 1 is back to searching for an org. They need almost no introduction, as they're the winners of the first ever Marvel Rivals LAN tournament, and quite famously dealt EMEA powerhouse Virtus.pro their first match loss during the group stage of Ignite Stage 1. And Team 1 aren't the only ones leaving behind their previous org. According to Dogman on X, the Shroud X roster are now also available as free agents. Their contract apparently ended, and the org didn't offer an extension, so now they're on the hunt for a new home. I don't foresee them being unsigned for long either, as they made it to the playoffs of Ignite Stage 1 and have a pile of big wins against competitive teams as well. Some other past Ignite competitors are also on the move. All Business and Fire Strays are reporting some moves as well. All Business picked up some big names like Blacks, Demon, and Jerky to their roster. Meanwhile, the Fire Strays have essentially rebuilt their entire roster from the ground up, combining former players from several other recognizable teams and Ignite competitors. From Blood Karyudo, iMonkey and Zenny joined the crew. From Ex-Oblivion, Blaziken, Etsu, and Seijiro have all joined up with the Strays. And finally, formerly of FlyQuest, Vanguard player Gasklin has also re-entered the competitive space after last being spotted with Dart Monkeys during the Stage 1 Open qualifiers. Shikigami has rebuilt a large portion of their roster as well, and are already in the hunt for Stage 2 invites via the Open qualifiers. Kuna, Pride, Proda, and Wicca remain from the original squad, now joined by the likes of Staced, Timber, Ripkin, Poke, Cordal, and Boomed. They were just shy of making the playoffs in Stage 1, so expect them to come back via their famed Shiki Slingshot for Stage 2. Other roster rebuilds and updates include both the likes of OG Seed, who held their Marvel Rivals Combine over the summer, and Team Peps as well. Peps will be back in Stage 2, but OG Seed is already back in the fight for a spot in Stage 2 in the most recent Open qualifiers. Moving on, the Atlanta Phoenix Guard roster has been cut loose. The former PXG squad hasn't left the competitive rival space, however. They've moved over to Ignite Stage 1 competing org Nightmare as Nightmare Ember. This left the door open for PXG to hire a brand new squad in the form of Busy at Work. We've talked about Busy at Work on the Rivals Report before, where they finished as the runners-up of the Rivals Ascension League after dominating the first two MRCs over on console. We've also got a brand new team forming in the form of FaZe, spelled with a PH and not an F. FaZe consists of players from a few different teams as well. Crisis, Pinclone, and Rosa, formerly of L9, Leolaz from Blood Karyudo, Oasis from Zero Tenacity, Binary from the original Fire Strays squad, and coached by Cuffy, formerly of Nightmare. We're seeing lots of teams form with a piecemeal style of recruiting players from other teams, including the team operated by former Overwatch pro Dylan, the Dilducks. The Dilducks are made up of Haluk and Arso, formerly of Luminosity, Legacy from 0%, and they're managed and analyzed by Sirius Noderi, who has experience with 2AM Esports, Fire Strays, Zero Tenacity, and Euphoria. One new team that's already making a splash in the competitive scene is Dreamland, another Overwatch org that's just recently thrown their hat into the Rivals ring. Dreamland consists of players like Chuckles from One Below All, Gibbery from Dark Zero, and Mason Valentina, both formerly of Solaris and Citadel's NA squad. They just recently captured an invite to Stage 2 of Ignite through the Open qualifiers, and in fact won the entire qualifier tournament. NA MRC Season 2 champs Cafe Noir are no more, at least not under the banner of the Cafe Esports. The former Noir squad has officially signed with Your Favorite Player, or YFP, a Valorant-centric org that's created some decent buzz in the Rivals community. Snows and Monotone join as subs, but most of the core roster remains the same as you may have seen them during the MRC or some other recent community tournaments like the Rivals Ascension League. But in the wake of their departure, the Cafe welcomes Cafe Rose into the mix, with full intentions of remaining in the Marvel Rivals space. They've already housed a champion caliber team once before, so Cafe Rose is certainly one to be on the lookout for. And a team that Noir has tangled with many times in some community tournaments, Necospresso, have also left behind their former org. They're staying together as well though, and taking the next step up as they sign with Outlast. Necospresso were the runners-up in the first season of the Rivals Ascension League alongside the champs Cafe Noir, and have some experience in some other community tournaments such as the 10X Rebirth circuit as well. There are also plenty of orgs competing in other games that are now throwing their hat into the rival space as well. The first of those would be Overwatch and Apex org Sakura GG, who just recently announced the addition of their Marvel Rivals team over on X. Among their ranks is Not Lexa, who has prior experience in both competitive Rivals and Overwatch with a variety of familiar faces, including Supernova, Arius, and Extinction. And last but not least, fighting out of Canada, Overwatch-centric org Realm Esports has also announced their intentions to compete at least in the Season 3 MRC. They, like many of the other teams in this quick breakdown, have already fought their way through the MRC Open qualifiers and have at least survived into the closed qualifiers. We'll be doing a check-in on the MRC before too long, so be sure to subscribe so you can catch up on all of that action ahead of Stage 2 of Ignite in September. And of course, we'll be keeping you updated on any further Rostermania news, with some more signings expected to be announced in the coming days. Keep it tuned to the Rivals Report for all your Rostermania updates. In other Ignite-related news, with the start of Stage 2 surprisingly just around the corner, it's qualifier season once again. Teams that made it to the playoffs of Stage 1 are automatically qualified to move on to Stage 2, but teams that didn't make it have to fight their way in. Let's take a quick look at some of the new teams you'll be seeing come Stage 2. On the Americas side of the aisle, there were 4 invites up for grabs in this first of 2 qualifier tournaments. The top 8 came down to a mix of familiar faces and new blood as well. The first matchup was between the Leftovers and the team formerly known as Busy at Work, now the Atlanta Phoenix Guard. They played immediately after their top 16 match was completed, and it was Atlanta PXG who'd secure their place in Ignite with a dominant 3-0 win. This comes after Atlanta PXG won both the first and second season MRCs over on console, so they're certainly a force to be reckoned with. Next up was a matchup between 2 teams that both participated in Stage 1 of Ignite, Ilani Wind versus Dark Zero. They've both been in the lab since Stage 1, participating in a variety of community tournaments like the Vanguardian League to sharpen their skills and prep themselves for another round of competition. Though it felt like Ilani Wind was catching up by the end of the Best of 5 series, DZ would close this one out on a commanding 3-0 win as well, ensuring their return to the Ignite stage come September. After that was another battle between 2 unsigned teams, Cross Guild versus Silly Cat Gaming. This was yet another particularly convincing win, this time for Silly Cat Gaming, as they'd close out the series 3-0 as well. The last map of Burn and T'Challa came down to an incredibly close .3, but Silly Cat managed to stop Cross Guild from extending the series any further. Finally, we rounded out the night with another dramatic matchup between newcomer team Dreamland and Ignite Stage 1 competitor Solaris. Dreamland may be a new team, but as we mentioned, there were some familiar faces on it. This was an absolutely brutal set, and the only one of top 8 that went beyond 3 maps. Solaris seemed to be somewhat in control from the start, but Dreamland would slowly claw their way back into the lead, an advantage they'd hold on to until the very end. Valentina and Mace fought and won over some of their former teammates, and Dreamland's Stage 2 dreams became a reality. Stinker's looking to put down some more kills for himself. Overtime runs out, and the clock runs out for Solaris. It is a 3-2 victory for Dreamland here in the open qualifiers, and they will advance to Stage 2 of Ignite. There was a similar spread of old versus new teams over in the EMEA qualifiers as well, with Alcacia and OG Seed trying to fight their way back in amongst a fierce field of competition. Alcacia would take on Pluvia in the first match, a fairly competitive 3-1 win for Cacia. Pluvia has been around for a bit now, having clocked a top 8 finish in the Season 2 MRC, so there's a good chance we'll be seeing them stay competitive in the next split of qualifiers. Unsigned team Chopped took down OG Seed in their matchup, an upset that sent the OG org back to the drawing board for another path into Ignite. We first saw them in Stage 1, so it's no surprise that they're at least in contention for another invite. But Chopped gave them surprisingly little ground to stand on in this match, taking both Hell's Heaven and Araco entirely uncontested by OG. 2 names you're likely familiar with if you follow the Rivals Report up next, as Dawncore takes on Think Twice. This was truly an MRC powerhouse matchup, with both teams having participated in a number of community tournaments between the 2 of them. But it would be Dawncore seizing the day in this matchup, taking a 3-1 win over the Saudi squad to finally ascend to the Ignite stage. And finally, OCE Stage 1 competitors The Vicious are branching out into the EMEA region, as they took on unsigned team Paradox in the final top 8 match. This was a brutal series as well, going the distance and playing out across all 5 maps, but it'd eventually be Paradox triumphing over the Vicious, stopping them from making their entrance into EMEA Ignite for now. And if you were knocked out in the first split of qualifiers, or if you and your squad didn't even know they were happening, there's still time to get in on the second split. Registration opens today as of the uploading of this video, and runs all the way up to the start of the qualifiers on Thursday. There's far less invites available in the second split, but you still have a shot to fight your way into the Ignite ecosystem. Next up, we've got a slate of highlights from the first 2 weeks of competition in the Vanguardian League. In the first week, Rivals Ascension League champs Project Blue Lock took on a Stage 1 Ignite competitor in Shikigami, and it was a tough matchup. VGL preliminaries are being played as best of ones, so the margin for error here is smaller than most teams are accustomed to. Central Park was the stage for this single map matchup. Things started off solid for Blue Lock on offense, as they were able to swiftly unlock the payload and start the long walk to Dracula's castle with just over 5 minutes on the clock. Shikigami would be able to hold them for a brutal 5-minute defensive lockdown, draining their time and stopping them from getting to the first checkpoint. No Shiki Slingshot needed here either, as they closed this one out with Poke on Magneto as the MVP. Drillmaster on the side of Blue Lock did their best to keep the team in the fight, but they just felt like they were lagging behind here. We'd also get our first glimpse of the former Atlanta PXG squad here in action as Nightmare Embers, squaring off with the Nighthairs. Nighthairs would find a 2-0 win here on Hell's Heaven, but Nightmare was starting to make a comeback on that second point. They'd take it all the way to a 99-99 overtime, but weren't able to stay alive. Nighthairs were able to pick off Nightmare 1 or 2 members at a time, preventing them from being able to muster a full offense and keeping them underfoot for most of this matchup. But it'd be Ignite Stage 1 competitors Ilani Wind that would emerge as the top team in Week 1, the only undefeated team at 5-0, and having defeated the likes of Shikigami, Project Blue Lock, Lotus, Nighthairs, and more. But there's more Vanguardian action where that came from, as Week 2 just wrapped up this past weekend as well. I was back in the booth with CB for this second round of competition, and here's what went down. We had another banger matchup involving Shikigami this week, but this time squaring off with Intergalactic, the team formerly known as Shroud X. We were in for an Ignite caliber match between these two Stage 1 competitors, a brutal back and forth on Celestial Husk that showcased everything these two teams had in the tank. Shikigami would put Intergalactic through their paces, charging up the famed Shiki Slingshot after losing point 1, but in a knockdown drag-out final team fight on point 3, it would be Intergalactic emerging victorious by a hair.
Cap point.
We had yet another Ignite team matchup in the final round of the broadcast, sticking with Intergalactic as they took on FlyQuest. And where Intergalactic were just wiping off their brow after a hard-earned victory over Shikigami, FlyQuest were waiting to deliver some serious pain in the final match of the day. Fly started things off with a breakneck pace push, toppling Intergalactic in almost every single team fight. They kept that insane momentum rolling as they swapped sides at halftime, and FlyQuest delivered a complete shutout to Intergalactic. There's still one more week of prelims in the VGL before they lock in their top 8 playoffs, with teams fighting for a piece of the more than $1,700 prize pool. Be on the lookout for replays to be uploaded to the Valhalla Order's YouTube channel, and keep it tuned to their social media platforms for stats from this week's matches to be delivered soon.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time. Wow.
Well, that's all for this week's Rivals Report. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest in Rivals Esports. And be sure to follow me on other platforms including Twitch, X, and TikTok. And if you're looking to break into Rivals Esports yourself, look no further than Engage. They're an organization that looks to empower esports players through event hosting and production. They're also the minds behind some Rivals community tournaments like the Chronovium Cup and the Rivals Grassroots Weekly. For all things Engage, keep it tuned to their website at engage.gg. I've been Diatonic, you've been amazing, and I'll see you in game.